Hi everybody, Jenn from McCreath. It's April 15th, 2014. Video number 3 of a series today in response to a request from the Massachusetts Transgender Political Coalition doing a story on transgender people in sports. Talked a little bit about the International Olympic Committee in my first video, their policy for trans athletes. I talked about my experience of being accepted as an athlete, as a female athlete, as I went through the trans process here in my hometown, St. John's, Newfoundland. And this video is going to look specifically at marathons and the Boston Marathon. At the time I was early in transition, I knew that it was going to take 2 years for me to go through the process to which I would then be deemed fair and suitable for competition against other females. I recognized that specifically for the first 6 months, from starting the hormone process and the pre-op process, that it would be unfair for me to run as a female. At the same time, unfair for me to run as a male. I reached out to several marathon organizations and requested that I be accepted either in a third category or just non-gendered. I want to run, I want a finishing time, I don't want to be labeled male. I don't want to be labeled anything. I just want to run and finish the race. I don't even need an award. For the most part, they were receptive to that. Boston became a very unique one. Boston's one of the few marathons out there that you can't just run. You got to qualify by running certain times in other marathons. In July 2008, I ran the Massey, Ontario Marathon, 3 hours and 16 minutes, which was actually 1 minute slower than the male qualifying benchmark. So I called up Boston and said, look, I'm going through this transgender process. I've lost a lot of my the transition process has taken away my testosterone. I'd love to run your race. Again, it doesn't matter. I don't necessarily want to compete against other people. I just missed the male mark by 1 minute. I'm not quite a female yet. And they said, you know what, we kind of have an unwritten guideline that once the field has filled up and if there's still some spaces available, we'll get in touch with people who missed the mark by a minute or two and give them a chance to come in. And they were quite happy to let me in. So I ran the Boston Marathon. First time, April 2009. Which is interesting because I had qualified back in July 2008. Fast forward 9 months. I then had the surgery, the gonadectomy, although it had not been a full 2 years. But I showed up for Boston, obviously, much slower and much more feminized. And they did allow me. Initially, it was going to be unclassified, but I did show up in the results as a female. And I guess I never asked them specifically, but the fact that I was not a contender to win may have factored into that. If I had shown up and was a threat to win the race, that may have been an issue. The fact that I was finishing back of the pack, nobody really cared, nobody complained. Technically, I had not met all the conditions of the Stockholm Consensus, but Boston was about being inclusive, and that's what they said. We want to make sure everyone can run this thing, and we're going to at least we'll get you a number, we'll get you on the course, we'll get you to run it. And that's what happened. I ran the race, and I finished the race. I had a great time, and the results do show that I ran it as a female. 4 hours and 29 minutes, nowhere near contention. So let's fast forward a year later. Once you go to Boston, you want to go back. Now this was interesting. I was initially accepted into my first Boston Marathon under a male qualification time. Now we're looking more at the female range. Breaking 3:15 became breaking 3:45. Just so happened, September 28th, I believe it was. Yeah, how can I forget? September 28th, I ran the Toronto Waterfront Marathon. That was one marathon that did not want to let me in as a female, unless I had reached full International Olympic Committee sanctioning, and at that point I had not. I still wanted to run the marathon, so I went and ran it anyways. Ran a 3:42. that time I was not thinking about Boston qualifying. I was just thinking about running. I'd slowed down. I even ran that as part of a 2-day event. I ran the Akron, Ohio Marathon on Saturday, then I ran Toronto on Sunday. I wanted to be able to say that I ran 2 marathons in 2 days. And I didn't care how slow I ran them, I just wanted to run them. So lo and behold, I went out and I ran 3:50 in Akron, then 3:42 in Toronto. Never thought anything of it, other than, guess, great, I finished. It sucks that I'm slower, but at least I can still do this. Well, guess what? 18 months later, I'm thinking about, I'd love to get back to Boston. Well, guess what? Now I am a female, and I did run a 3:42 as a male, but 3:45 again was the female qualifying. So I called Boston again. And although the Toronto Waterfront Marathon said they were going to classify me as a male, the Marathon Statistics Reporting Encyclopedia, known as Marathon Guide, had me in as a female. I don't know how or why that happened. It said Jennifer McCreath, male. Somebody must have said, that's a mistake. Jennifer McCreath sounds like a female name. So under Marathon Guide, it says Jennifer McCreath, female, 3:42, Toronto Waterfront Marathon. They said, well, if the Marathon Guide's calling you female, we're going to accept that. We accept Marathon Guide as a credentialed source, and as far as we're concerned, you made it. 3:45 is the cutoff. You ran a 3:42. You qualify as a female. You're in as a female. It made it a lot easier for Boston to kind of pass the buck rather than take responsibility for perhaps letting. Again, if I was a serious threat to win the race, then they might have looked at it a little differently. Someone running a 3:42 is no threat to win the race. Get in there and run and have a good time. Cross the finish line, smile. Everybody goes home happy. As it happened, I had further. My strength and endurance had deteriorated further, and I'd gained some weight, and I ran a 5-hour, 15-minute marathon, finishing near the back of the pack. Ultimately, I got to run the Boston Marathon twice. Neither time I showed up, I guess, in best shape. The first year I actually ran Charlottesville 2 days before Boston, so I showed up already sore. Then the next year I came in undertrained and out of shape. Technically, I did meet qualification criteria. Technically, I got to run both Boston Marathons, even though I had not sufficed the IOC's requirement. It wasn't actually until January 2011 that I had the final surgery to have female genitalia and hence get legal government recognition that I was a female. So technically, Boston allowed me to run twice, although I had not met the International Olympic Committee's formally recognized guideline. Now note, the word guideline is not necessarily the same as a policy. It's a case-by-case scenario. Boston has the right to let people run or choose not to let people run, although obviously they could face discrimination lawsuits if they were to turn someone away. It's a private event. I think Boston Marathon's a great leader here. They could have said, no, we don't want trans people here, but no, not at all. Totally welcoming. Love to have you here. Anything we can do to make this work, let's do it. Two of the greatest moments in my life were running the Boston Marathon in 2009 and 2010. If I never accomplish anything else in my life, I can die proud knowing that I ran Boston twice, and I've got nothing but great things to say. Thank you, Boston Marathon. And ultimately, though, this is an issue that's going to require some more attention. The day's going to come where another trans athlete will show up, and they will be in a position to win the race. And someone's going to say, wait, that's not fair. And we need sound, solid, secure policies to be able to map that person against the policy and say, yes, it's fair, or no, it's not. Again, I look at national athletic bodies. Athletics Canada, I talked a little bit about how they had no interest in looking at this matter. National bodies need to get to the table. We need countries to come together. We need to push the International Olympic Committee and say, thank you for starting a policy, but it's not good enough. Not all trans people have full sex reassignment surgery. Not all governments recognize sex changes legally on paper. This needs to be about fairness to compete, not about government documents. And athletics, it all starts about a culture of acceptance and inclusion. We need to include trans people. We don't need societal pressures to keep them out of sport. I could do a fourth video on the World Out Games and that whole experience. Newfoundland Labrador Athletic Association, I'll give them thumbs up. Thank you for working with me to ensure my inclusion in the sport, and doing so in a way that did not negatively impact me or other competitors. I hope other athletic bodies out there, whether at the local level, provincial, state, regional, or national or international, will come together and look at this and find ways. How can we ensure that trans people can have fair access and feel safe, accepted, and included in sports? And should be given opportunities for training and development. If Athletics Canada had worked with me in 2008 and threw a scholarship my way, who knows, I could have been, I'm not saying I would have made the Olympics, but I was doing very well at the time. That there was, in my opinion, a sad opportunity lost here, and I hope that we can all learn from this. Anyway, that's part 3 of the video. I will do a part 4. I want to talk about Copenhagen, because that was another groundbreaking experience. Thanks so much for watching this one, and I hope this was educational and informative.